The DSS today has dragged the 2023 presidential candidate, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, social media and tech giant X and Meta, to court over comments and posts on social media made against President Bola Tinubu. Former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, says President Bola Tinubu inherited what he describes as a debris economy. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I am Sowore here in Abuja. Let's begin by letting you know that the Department of State Services, the DSS, today has filed a 5-count charge at the Federal High Court in Abuja against the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, AAC, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. The DSS listed Xcore and Meta Incorporated, owners of Facebook, as co-defendants in the matter. A director of the public prosecutions at the Federal Ministry of Justice, Muhammad Abubakar, as well as other lawyers for the DSS, filed the charges on behalf of the agency and the Nigerian government. The DSS had on September the 8th handed Sowore a 1-week ultimatum to delete what it described as a false, malicious, and inciting social media post about President Bola Tinubu. The ultimatum expired on Monday without Sowore deleting the post on President Bola Tinubu. Also, the social media companies, Xcore and Meta Incorporation, who own X and Facebook, failed to oblige a demand by the DSS to delete Sowore's accounts. And a lot of analysts were now talking about the comment about Kirk in the United States, what is happening in Nigeria, social media comments, and the extent of freedom. Now, this particular suit is in the realm of criminal allegations made by the DSS because of what they say is a weighty comments being made by the former presidential candidate against the person of President Bola Tinubu. We will be talking about the economy and what Nigerian President Bola Tinubu met on the ground before when the past president Muhammadu Buhari exited office, where Dogara, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, said it was a disastrous economy left for him and the man is making policy. I will be giving you insight on what he said today at a special speech that he made at the House of Representatives, and we shall also be diving into the state of the nation and how the present state of things and our realities affect the fundamentals of our living. But before we get talking, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
Nigeria has unveiled a $3.14 billion investment portfolio under the Food and Agriculture Organization's Hand-in-Hand initiative aimed at boosting the country's agricultural potential. The portfolio targets growth in tomato, cassava, maize, dairy, and fisheries value chains, supported by $1.75 billion in public investment and $1.39 billion from the private sector. At the National and Sub-Regional Hand-in-Hand Investment Forum in Abuja, Vice President Kashim Shettima emphasized the federal government's commitment to enhancing food security, agricultural productivity, and investment in the sector. The federal government is once again reiterating its commitment to ensuring that every Nigerian is captured in the National Identity Database, describing it as a crucial step towards building a secure, inclusive, and digitally empowered country. Speaking in Abuja during the National Identity Day celebration, President Bola Tinubu stressed the importance of creating a system where every citizen's identity is recognized, verifiable, and protected. The president said the initiative is central to the country's development agenda, ensuring that no one is left behind. At the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center, where the event was held, the National Identity Management Commission rolled out fresh enrollment figures and assured Nigerians of the safety of their personal data.
Based on the initiatives, ability to think out of the box, I think NIMC has done fantastically well. NIMC, my last charge to you, your ministerial charge, go, deliver, keep making us proud. Let Nigeria be greater for it. Let renewed hope not be a dream. Let it be a reality in identity journey.
A civil society organization, Center for Democracy, has called on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to strengthen Nigeria's electoral process by improving its technological infrastructure, logistics, and voter outreach strategies. Speaking during the presentation of Observation Report on Anambra State Continuous Voter Registration Exercise in Abuja, the director of the center, Dr. Dogara, notes that the CDD's latest report on the Continuous Voter Registration (CVR) in Anambra shows encouraging signs but emphasized the importance of reaching more indigents in the state with voter education. He appealed to politicians to allow peace before, during, and after the election. Senator Tony Nwoye has once again raised alarm over the deplorable state of the Onitsha Aguleri Ayam-Melum Adani Express Road, describing it as complete impassable and a nightmare for commuters. The lawmaker, alongside a handful of stakeholders, undertook a spot assessment of the federal road which links Onitsha through several communities in Anambra North before connecting to Adani in Enugu State. The senator notes that residents, farmers, and traders across at least 7 local government areas have been cut off from their homes and farmlands, stressing that the situation is crippling livelihoods in the area.
What we need most is for the urgent award of this road, because of how important this road is. This road links more than 30 communities, more than 7 local governments. This road we are seeing. Apart from other people who are not from Anambra North, who have 7 local governments in Anambra North, people from other local governments pass through here.
There you have it. You've been served with your political roundup story. So let's tell you what the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, has been saying about the state of the Nigerian economy. Honorable Yakubu Dogara today at the maiden distinguished parliamentarian lecture delivered by him at the new wing of the House of Representatives building at the National Assembly complex, says that President Bola Tinubu inherited what he described as a debris economy, a rent economy where anything goes, but the president has put in place policies that will shape the Nigerians' future. Let me allow you to listen to a portion of what he said earlier today.
By the time President Tinubu took office, the economic debris of this nation had become too conspicuous to be ignored. 22.7 trillion, we're all journalists here, we know this, had been printed and injected into the economy in the name of ways and means, thereby destroying the value of the naira in our pockets. Also, the dual exchange rate meant that some anointed people were making hundreds of millions of naira of forex allocations from the CBN, which is Central Bank of Nigeria, without producing any goods or offering any services whatsoever. And also tying our crude sales to foreign loans in the name of forward sales of crude was fast becoming the order of the day. Some of the foreign loans had been procured in order to help strengthen the value of the naira, a measure that could only be sustained by what experts call voodoo economics. So from day one, it was very clear there's something urgent, revolutionary must be done to prevent our economy from imploding. So the president's job as an economic reformer began on day one. Now every reformer knows that progress is no promise, it is fought for. All that a reformer is actually bothered about is to do the right things, not to have everything under control. As a matter of fact, if everything seems under control, it is not only an indication that you are not going fast enough, you are most probably not a reformer. As a tested Democrat, Mr. President also knows that for an economy to be working, for a democracy solely to be working, it must offer more than political and individual. It must offer economic more especially from economic shocks.
All right, then. You heard him, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, former Speaker of the House of Representatives. Yesterday, we reported to you what has become a consistent decline in the inflation rate. We reported to you that the Nigeria's inflation rate, as reported by the NBS, had consistently experienced a decline and eased to 20.12% in August. When compared to the July 2025 rate, which stood at 21.88%, it shows that things may be shaping up. But what does this mean for the future of our country and the monies in the pocket and food on the table of the average Nigerian? Is the Tinubu policy and the APC agenda working? You can see the graph there on your screen. Let's make some sense on all of these issues from what the former Speaker of the House of Representatives said. And the graph you can see right there on your screen. I'm being joined by a former presidential candidate in the 2023 election for the Social Democratic Party, SDP, Prince Adewale Adebayo, who's also our lawyer. He's live for us on the program tonight. Thanks so much, Prince Adewale Adebayo, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Chairman, and God bless Nigeria.
Absolutely. So you look at what Honorable Yakubu Dogara, I'd like to get your view. You heard part of what he said at that lecture today, and fundamentally saying that it was a fait accompli. The Tinubu had a dead baby on his hand called an economy. Things were, and there are portions of what Yakubu Dogara said really now facts today at that lecture. What do you make of it? I mean, if you had won the election, other than the president, that what he described today at that lecture was what you also have inherited. Are those facts for you that Nigerians need to take cognizance of?
Well, thank you. It's obvious that the economy that President Buhari left was a poorly managed economy, was an emergency room patient, and like any emergency room patient, your road to recovery will be good diagnosis by the doctor. So if the doctor is able to know what is the reason why you are ill, he will be able to put you on a solid path to recovery. What President Tinubu has done is to stabilize the patient, but I'm not sure that he has managed to know the ailment. So the patient is not going to die imminently, but he hasn't found a cure. He hasn't been able to identify the problem, the ailment that is disturbing the patient. But he's, as an emergency room doctor, he's taking some steps. Some of it actually aggravated the case of the patient, but over time, he appears to have one or two wins in two sectors, which is why it appears that they may be deceived into thinking that the patient is on his road to recovery. One, he's managed to get more revenue, at least in nominal terms, and the borrowing, domestic borrowing that was the feature of President Tinubu's public finance has reduced. So he's managed to get some revenue in. Of course, because of other wrong-headed policies, that money he's gotten in real terms will not be able to finance a lot of the government spending and infrastructure. However, in terms of balance sheet, Tinubu has managed to have a better balance sheet than Buhari left him. Second thing that helped them, which, well, we'll know in the long run whether it's really a good thing to do, was that they rebased the inflation. So they started counting inflation differently. So if they say inflation has dropped to about 20-point-something% now, from 21-point-something% last month, it's not because the economy is performing better, but because the counting has changed. And whether the accounting is more reflective of the reality, let us see what happens by the first quarter of next year when they are implementing their budget. Remember that the 2025 budget doesn't appear to have come on stream yet. So we won't be able to know how that works in terms of macroeconomics. Then the third thing that has worked for them is the relative fall in food inflation. So food inflation has dropped, and food inflation is a major component of the inflation basket. So since the prices of food stuff have come down a bit, not that those who are at home are going to feel it, because it hasn't dropped to the level where they can feel it, but it is dropped in the numbers. So it's like someone who's trying to cash a bag of rice that is placed 10 feet above you. Your hand cannot reach it, but if you drop it to 8 feet, your hand still cannot reach it, but it's lower than before. So that is how it is. So in a way, the economy is not, in terms of these numbers, worse now than it was last year. Slightly better, but far, far away from where it ought to be. And if you look at the inflation number across sub-region, for example, I don't want to sound, if I mention America, they will say, oh, that's a different place. We are the fourth highest still in inflation. Benin Republic, next to us, the inflation is barely above 1%. And if you go around the CEDEAO countries, the countries that use CFA, the highest is Senegal because of Senegal's high borrowing. But all other countries around, they are 2%, 2.something%. Even Tanzania, which economy is beginning to resemble our own somehow, if you look at the exchange rate and other factors, Tanzania is barely 3.3% in inflation. So there is no major country, South Africa, which is our competitor, Morocco, none of them is up to 5% in inflation. We are still at 20-something%. So we need to get to as low as 7% before we start to look at recovery from the point of view of inflation. It's a good number, better number than before, but it's not a number that's going to take you to the promised land. So we still need to focus more on the real economy, but it will help them with borrowing. It's likely that the trajectory is that the Naira may fall to about 1,430 by Christmas if they follow the way they are going. That still doesn't make you quite a strong economy, but it means that at least people can plan, and people will not be hoarding the dollar anymore, and people will not be in a hurry to start bidding for money they don't need in the fear that it might rise. And those who are preserving the value of their savings in foreign exchange might begin to have confidence and try to pick up Naira assets. That may help. But in the long run, what matters is that the budget must perform very well. But if you go into the well of IMF, despite all the numbers they are hiding up and down, there's a report where they concluded that actually Nigeria's inflation is being principally driven by poor infrastructure. So if we improve on the infrastructure, the transport cost is cheaper, that will impact on food, that will impact on productivity, that will also impact on discretionary income that is left for the people. And that will also cushion the effect of the poverty of wages that we have in the country. So the country needs to look at infrastructure, we need to look at agriculture. And those numbers don't lie. And that's why I commend Dogara for speaking eloquently for his party and his people, but I think we should be more realistic in terms of the real economy to grow employment, grow agriculture, grow infrastructure. That requires time, and that requires consistency.
Yeah, so let's look at it. I'm still going to come back to the implication of the inflation figure as release announced by the NBS. But I'm a bit curious, and for us perhaps to interrogate some of the things that Honorable Yakubu Dogara said. Perhaps the inference is maybe some people are too harsh on President Bola Tinubu. He's the one who said, look, I asked for the job and I'm going to get it done. But when you hear, and you might want to also ruminate over some of these scenarios and let it soak in some of what has happened and how the economy has been handled before Bola Tinubu came into office. 22.7 trillion, according to Yakubu Dogara, said it's been printed and injected into the economy in the ways and means, thereby destroying the value of the naira in our pockets. That means that whatever effort Bola Tinubu came into office in trying to fix some part of the economy, working with Cardoso in the CBN, it was somewhat of a fait accompli because it has terribly been bastardized. It went further to say the dual exchange rate, and these are the heart of the economy policies of Bola Tinubu and the APC, that some anointed people were making hundreds of millions of naira of forex allocation, collecting forex, simply allowing it to go up. They will make their money, and like that in a circle. The foreign loans in name of four sales of crude was fast becoming the order of the day. And this brings me to the question here. Those kind of attitude, because there are trends that he has described there, and I picked out three of them. The ways and means, which made the CBN look like a joke, printing money and all of that. What, the National Assembly was there on money and all of that. What, the National Assembly was there and under their nose, those kind of things were happening. The issue of the racketeering of dollar and the foreign exchange and how they allow the fluctuation to make some people richer. And also, he mentioned that foreign loans, which have now in the forward sales of crude, was becoming the order of the day. That so few people in this country rich people, and we all saw the total mess, economically speaking. And economists came here on the program and said, Sheung, the economy under Buhari was taken back 20 years.
Okay, well, if there's a question, let us understand it. These confessional statements are being made by the same people who came to power in 2015. So there are two ways to look at it. Look at it as an economist. You don't blame anybody. You just analyze the numbers as they come in, and you can say it's trending better or trending worse. But if you look at the political economy or the politics of it, you will see that they are the same people. What has happened, if you look back in the Abacha years, you will see there was a time they were doing a Jakuta debt swap and another swap and all of that. That's how a lot of money got lost. In some regime, they use different things. In the Jonathan government, they use the crude in exchange for petrol to do their own fraud and many other things that they used. You will give crude oil, and then you will expect them to give you refined product. They messed that up. They messed up the foreign exchange. They messed up the money for security. In President Buhari's administration, they went everywhere, but they were famous for the dual exchange rate and the allocation of foreign exchange to people who were known as the cabal and who would now later sell it to somebody else. And many of them who were influential at that time participated in it. And another government will come, like when this government came, I think they said, look, they don't want to do that. But they are doing other things that suits them as well. So if you look into their own manner of awarding contracts, many things that they are doing, I would probably do those things differently. So maybe it's when the next government comes, we're going to start talking about what they are doing as well. But I am more interested in what we ought to be doing. What we ought to be doing is not celebrating the end of one criminality at the beginning of another. And to say, well, these people used to come into the bank and pick the money, but I'm not doing that anymore, I'll do something else. What we need to ask ourselves is, are we governing the economy properly? No, we are not. And if we want to do that, what are the things we need to do? What Cardoso is doing, was what we recommended, part of it was that the Central Bank of Nigeria has to face its monetary management. It has the responsibility for the value of the naira, for the exchange rate, for inflation rate. And if it does not help them with deficit financing, if it does not help them to cook the books, the federal government would now have to manage its finance. So Mr. Wale Edun would now have to look at his fiscal position and say, okay, well, on the monetary side, there's nothing CBN wants to do for me. They're trying to defend the currency and make it stable. So let me now look at government revenue to make sure that I'm collecting more of the government revenue as I should collect. So President Tinubu is a better tax collector than, or revenue collector than President Buhari. So that's not saying much because President Buhari wasn't very good at many things that have to do with good governance. But it's an improvement which needs to be recognized. But it hasn't reached the point where we are collecting sufficient amount of money. Because if you look at our government collection relative to our GDP, it shows that we are not efficient in revenue collection. Then on the side of appropriation, they have not been transparent appropriation, and they've not appropriated in line with Chapter 2 of the Constitution. So I will not endorse the appropriation, but it's better. The appropriation is better than that of President Buhari in the sense that in President Buhari's time, almost everybody was in the silo, doing whatever they liked, and did not implement any of their budgets at all. So I'm surprised that the National Assembly, which consists of about the same people who were there in Buhari's time, are the one now discussing as if they are aliens coming from outer space. They were part of it. In fact, at the tail of Buhari's administration, the National Assembly ought to have impeached him on the basis of the unauthorized ways and means. They actually didn't call ways and means, but they're actually theft, outright theft of 22.7 trillion. But the same National Assembly legalized it by retroactively adopting it. So you can't blame President Buhari anymore. And there are many reasons why they did it, but national interest was not one of them. So the question, therefore, is President Tinubu is trying to plug some of the holes that he helped President Buhari to create, because he was part of the people who brought him to government, who sustained him there, who campaigned for a second term. So they are part of the same people, and his people were also there. So I think that they are trying now to realize that they have reached the end of the road with respect to that aspect. But I would rather we spend time to try to figure out how to go away from this their style of governance, style of management of the economy, to one that is more substantive, that's going to create employment, create infrastructure, and actually reduce inflation to single digit and reduce unemployment to single digit, and actually let us have a sound economy on which we can build. I'm in for that conversation.
All right. Give me a moment, everyone. We need to go on the break. When we return, I will be asking what Prince Adewale Adebayo thinks about the inflation when the government says, in fact, there is a possibility that sometimes in the nearest few months, we might be seeing that the inflation rate will go into a single digit. That will be one of the greatest news for these few months. How will that happen? Are we on the right track? These are critical questions for the Tinubu and the APC government to achieve their dreams of the renewed hope agenda, but fundamentally, the food on the table and the money in the pocket. He's going to be impacted on how that will happen. We'll be finding out after this break, everyone. Join us again. Program. Our conversation continues with Prince Adewale Adebayo, 2023 presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SCP. I look at the figures, And I mean, I wouldn't be tired of asking the question of whether or not whatever we're saying now is a signal of a better day ahead. For a lot of Nigerians who personally may not be able to make sense of what the graphs and the figures and the releases from NBS means to them and how they can interpret it. And I'm wondering whether or not we can make sense of those figures and whether we can interpret it to what will become our own lot as a people in the next coming days. At least hope for a better day ahead. What should Nigerians picture in their mind for the next few weeks, few months?
Okay, thank you. There are two aspects to the study of economics, and it's deliberate. There's the macro. What we have been discussing now is the overall picture, macroeconomics of it, that the government is trying to control its spending, is trying to control the prices of money, and is trying to manage inflation. Now, that's at the macro level. So the macro, GDP, all of those things are macroeconomic indicators. For example, equivalent of saying 2 trailers of rice move into Channels TV studios in Abuja. That is a macro picture for Channels TV. But whether Sheung Okinbaloye gets 1 bag or 1 mudu is microeconomics. So the way government can connect is to make sure that people have jobs. That if the economy is improving, or whichever we want to improve it, that you can actually make it percolate to the people. And there are only 2 ways you can do it. You can do it by creating an environment where people get employment and they get paid living wages and they can start solving the economic problem. Or you make transfers by way of ensuring that you lower costs of living for people. So if, for example, you say you slash transport costs sustainably in a community, the people will save half of their cost of transportation. If you do housing and you can have affordable housing at about 10% of your income, then you are transferring the success to the microeconomics of the households. But all this discussion, including the long lecture given by Right Honorable Dogara, and the way in which the government has been talking, they leave the microeconomics out of it completely. The affordability for households. So it is good that the government is having to borrow less. It is good that we are not using our foreign exchange, for example, to import as much petroleum products as we used to do before the Dangote refinery. It is good that we are in the high season of harvest and some food would be immediately available to people. This may not be sustainable when we go outside the harvest season and we have to go back to the silos to get food or things like that. So, but the key thing that will make Nigerians to start feeling it is what the government has failed to do. They need to rejig the economy, reward their spending to create jobs. And I challenged them last year, and I'm repeating the challenge now. They should always indicate how many jobs created in whatever report that they give. Because that is the only way by which they can ensure that a hardworking Nigerian breadwinner can take care of his family and say, because the economy has been made better, I am able to live better. Because the economy has been made better, my children, who used to be dependent on me, now are able to work.
All right.
Because the factor cost has gone down across board, I am able to save a little more money. But without that, they will be looking at you and I talking on television like we are talking about a different country entirely. Because when they step out of their door to try to buy a loaf of bread, a lie will be put to what we are saying.
So when you were making comparison to other African nations and you were trying to draw back from making the comparison with United States, so you look at a country like Senegal, inflation is 2%, Tanzania 4%, Benin Republic 2.40%. Ghana's inflation dropped to 11.5% from 23.8% in December 2024. That is very drastic. But here is the thing. In part of what Yakubu Dogara said in that lecture was some of the top policies and some of what he says are revolutionary about the decision of the Tinubu government. One of it is the tax reforms laws that has been age-long tax reform laws that are being now rejigged, and we are going to be experiencing a new corridor, a new environment in tax administration in Nigeria. Perhaps let me allow our viewers to hear what the debate or the defense of Mr. Dogara in respect of these tax reforms and what it means for our nation. He says is one of the revolutionary steps of the Bola Tinubu government. Take a listen to Honorable Yakubu Dogara on the tax reform laws.
For decades, our tax system had been a complex, sometimes contradictory web of ordinances and acts. It was a system where too few shouldered the burden of too many, where enforcement was inconsistent, and where informality was the norm, not the exception. The goals of these reforms are ambitious and frankly necessary. Nigeria's 2025 tax reform package is the most audacious overhaul of our fiscal framework in decades, and in response to long-standing fragmentation in the country's tax laws and administration. The stated goals are to simplify the legal framework, broaden the tax base, strengthen compliance, and align selected rules with international tax practices. The Presidential Committee, in its own words, summarized the goal of the reforms thus: they protect the poor, empower businesses, encourage investment, and ensure fairness across society. They strengthen Nigerians' competitiveness, reduce inequality, and provide the government with the resources needed to invest in infrastructure, education, health, and security. The reform forms part of a broader fiscal strategy that accompanies fuel subsidy removal and exchange rate unification introduced by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration since 2023. I believe this is a vision we can all, in principle, support, because a stronger Nigeria benefits all of us.
So you saw it there. As of the first half of 2025, Nigeria's tax revenue hit 14.27 trillion. That is in the first half. That means that something is changing. There is some step in a positive direction. But like you said, the microeconomics of the whole game is what concerns the average Nigerian. The bottom line, what this means for them. Are they able to, the purchasing power, are they able to transport from here to there cheaper than they used to be? But from what he said, would you give some kudos or some respect to what Bola Tinubu and his administration have done over the last 2 years in some specific areas, such as the tax reforms?
Everybody knows that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, even in his private life, is a well-known tax collector. So that his tax collector experience is an improvement over the disorganized system that he met on ground. So he did the tax collection in Lagos. He's coming to do tax collection in Abuja now. The problem is that the grandiose speeches of Honorable Dogara is overstating it. This reform, it's okay. It's not the best, but it's far better than what they had before. But they're overselling it, because what we need to understand is that they've done so many other things, which has made the 14 trillion, which they are collecting now, to not be worth the paper on which it is written, compared to what they met on ground. So if you do it in real value, what can it buy? The purchasing power of the 14 trillion is not as sound as 7 trillion in the previous year. So let us not over-celebrate that. But it's a good thing to have a tax policy that the people who are running the administration understand. I have a better tax policy than that, but I'm not running the government. This is the one I want to use. When SDP wins and I come in, I give you a fairer, more equitable, and more realistic tax system that increases the GDP. Because the problem you're going to have is if you tax people out of productivity, instead of taxing them to productivity, people stop spending, no new job created, no new field open, and the economy is shrinking. And the economy has to shrink because of the fact that you are not creating infrastructure out of the money, and you're not creating new fields. There are so many aspects of our national life that we are not investing in. And if you don't make investment, your GDP will not grow.
All right.
If you don't have sufficient investment, your GDP will not grow. If it doesn't grow, especially grow above your population growth, you are in serious trouble, no matter how good a tax collector you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to learn those positives under this government that this government is doing and how it will impact on the lives of the average person. But we cannot take away the fact that where the pains are and where some of the trouble that they find in running this government lies, we need to take them up and bring them up. But someone like Atiku Abubakar, your opponent in the election, had come up to say, the manner in which this government is running things it's likely to cause some kind of revolution and uprising in the country. He doesn't think that things are going well. He thinks that there is hunger in the land. He thinks that a lot of Nigerians are suffering, and he likened to areas like some parts of the Middle East or a country like Tunisia where we saw the Arab Spring, and he has in fact said EndSARS was a child's play. And one of the things that causes the frustration of the average person. Can you make sense for us? I mean, if Atiku Abubakar had his own analysis of the state of things align with the kind of scenario that is playing, the realities of the average person in this country?
Well, the situation at hand is not salutary for any Nigerian, the average Nigerian at least. But I don't subscribe to the point that it needs a revolution or anything. It just means a change of government, a democratic change of government, so that we can have a change of policy. Even before we have a change of government in 2027, I am more interested in the government of the day having a change of policy, an enhancement in their policy. Our problems are not difficult to solve. If anyone comes to me today and says, let's do a revolution in Nigeria, I will say, don't do anything like that. Just make simple changes. You don't need the Arab Spring. You don't need any of those things. What you need is a more accountable government, a government that is more responsive and is smarter in the management of our resources. So we need an improvement over what President Tinubu is doing. He is doing something, but he's not doing enough. And he's not working at the rate which can answer the needs of the people. But there's nothing the government is doing that's illegal or lawful, unconstitutional, that you want to do a revolution against them. You just need to keep pointing out the weaknesses in what policies they're bringing forward, the gaps in those policies. And, for example, I'll give you a better tax situation. I will give you GDP growth of not less than 12%, because that's the GDP growth you need if you are going to be able to deal with poverty. And I've recommended to them, like they just came from Brazil, that they should follow what was done by the Workers' Party, invest in the people. If you look at the 2025 budget, it's not an investment in the people. It looks more like the Argentine budget, slash and burn kind of budget, which does not allow people to participate in the economy. The real money that President Tinubu as a tax collector is looking for lies in the muzzle and the brain of the young people who are not employed now. So we must do a budget that allows them to get employed. By the time we get people employed, Vice President Atiku will not see anybody to join his revolution. People will be at work. working.
All right, let's take a break, everyone. But when we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation. We'll be right back. So much, everyone. Our closing moment now with Prince Adewale Adebayo. I'd like to know, if you were in President Bola Tinubu's shoes, at this very critical juncture, moving into the second half of his administration, and we know that electioneering activities and all that will take over within the next few months, what would you do for the mandates that is being given, especially the promises he made to Nigerian people? What would you do to make the Nigerian people, the average person, feel the impact of some of these policies directly at the micro level?
Okay, the things I would do are not the things that President Tinubu would do. But if he listens to me, he may want to do them, because he's doing what he said he was going to do. I will have to do my own. Basically, I would pay attention to revenue generation. He's paid attention to that, but the number he's getting is not convincing to me, because in real value is not growing. So he's just taking advantage of his own self-inflicted inflation. So I will increase the revenue for the country. Second, I would ensure that my budget deals with the social sector. If there is a fight between me and President Tinubu, it's a fight over social sector. He has, I don't know why, but he has very little interest in investment in housing, in education, in healthcare, in food and agriculture. And basically, it just assumed that these are revenue guzzlers, and the return is not good enough for him. So, and if he doesn't do that, he can't grow the GDP. So if he doesn't invest in those things, he won't be able to create jobs. He can't create jobs out of the sky. So he needs to put money in infrastructure, put money in housing, put money in transportation, put money in healthcare, and put money in education.
We need to go, Prince Adewale Adebayo, but I'm just hoping that, I hope that tonight, that this government is listening. Although IMF forecast about the economy puts the forecast at 3.4% growth, we've experienced Q1 GDP growth at 3.13%. And what we're seeing in the inflation rate and the decline, if there is if there is an active and real effort in driving it further down, we might just achieve the single digit inflation rate, as some of those who were in government have said. Well, thank you so much.
That is even the beginning of the journey. Single digit interest rate, other countries have it, they're not doing better, but it's the beginning. It's like, say, the temperature of the patient has come to normal. Doesn't mean he's cured of the fever, but it's a good start. But they shouldn't assume that that's an end on his own, but it's a good start.
All right.
And then you can plan better at both micro and macro level. That's basically what it is. But they need to serve the people who elected them.
We're hoping for a better Nigeria. Thank you so much indeed for joining us tonight, Prince Adewale Adebayo, 2023 SDP presidential candidate. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, and God bless Nigeria.
That's our show tonight, everyone. We would like to let you know that President Bola Tinubu since arrived in Abuja after a short his travel holiday leave from Paris and the United Kingdom. Also, we do know that Sowore has all equally sued the DSS. We'll be giving you more details at the top of the hour on our Channel Television news track. I'm Sowore. Bye for now. God bless Nigeria.